He had red hair like me, kissed by fire.
Redheads on screen have long tended to fall into two camps. They're either ostracized or fetishized.
I like redheads. Their mouths are like a drop of strawberry jam in a glass of milk.
And the dividing line comes down to their gender. While redhead women are often portrayed as hypersexual vixens,
But I know when that redhead starts getting kooky that something about me feels alive inside.
redheaded men are presented as undesirable outcasts.
How is it okay for you to bully Ben?
Because he's a ranger.
A what?
A ranger, sir. Because he's got red hair, orangutan.
Yeah.
That's what we call him.
A big reason for the redhead dichotomy is the fact that natural red hair is the rarest hair color there is, existing in only 1 to 2% of the population.
I'd held the highest opinion of redheads as a fellow hair minority group.
As a result, the redhead has historically been used in art history, film, and TV as a visual symbol of differentness. Digging deeper into on-screen portrayals of redheads, we can better understand our culture's responses to difference in general. While being a white redhead in actual life should never be equated with the experience of a person of color, the on-screen redhead's ostracization and fetishization dichotomy is a revealing mirror of how our society responds to more substantial cultural difference, whether racial, religious, or ethnic. Here's our take on how we can use the redhead dichotomy to expose our views on difference and prejudice more broadly.
The ginger element. Well, I've sort of got a borderline phobia.
I'm not ginger.
There's a tinge of it.
If you're new here, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified about all of our new videos. This dichotomy of redheaded women as fiery, seductive types and redheaded men as the nerdy, weirder types actually has a long history. Sarah Dotson writes that visual artists have mined the potent symbolism of red hair to alternately suggest promiscuity, sensuality, deviousness, and above all, otherness for centuries.
A whore named Roz.
What colour hair?
Red.
Oh, I like red hair.
Dante Gabriele Rossetti's La Ghirlandata, or the famously redhead-focused paintings of Titian, reinforce the link between red-haired women and beauty or hyperfemininity. Mary Magdalene, typically cast in Christian dialogue, though not in the Bible itself, as a sinner who's saved by Jesus, is often painted with red hair, which becomes a symbol of the sexual sin she leaves behind.
Her long hair flows like a river over the stone that she leans against, but there in no way is it being used to hide her nakedness.
In modern culture, the redheaded woman is frequently exoticized, with red hair even becoming a visual shorthand for female sexiness. In Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Jessica Rabbit is the ultimate male fantasy. According to her creator, Richard Williams, thanks to her impossible proportions and long flame red hair.
You don't know how hard it is being a woman looking the way I do.
In True Blood, Jessica is turned into a vampire as an inexperienced girl, and the character's virginity even regenerates after each time she has sex.
Every time will be like our first time.
So she embodies the patriarchal male fantasy of an erotic virgin.
I wanted anything so bad in my life. Make love to me again.
Willow in Buffy the Vampire Slayer is a bookish redhead who falls more into the nerdy stereotype typically reserved for boys, but her vampire counterpart is a more sexualized version of herself.
Kinda like the idea of the two of us.
These countless examples linking red hair to feminine hypersexuality and femininity itself directly affect how we view redheaded men, whose portrayals, on the other side of this coin, tend to be emasculating.
Why spiders? Why couldn't we follow the butterflies?
Historically, red hair has been used to signify weakness or cowardice in men.
Can we panic now?
While Mary Magdalene's hair related to her feminine sin and difference, Judas Iscariot was also often depicted as having red hair in medieval art to signify his far more treacherous difference and disloyalty.
Do you know who was Ginger? Judas.
If we look at popular cartoons, the association with red hair being less masculine is seemingly ingrained from childhood. In The Simpsons, the meeker Rod and Todd Flanders are redheads.
Can we play now? You are playing. We're a team. Yay!
In Rugrats, while Tommy is the brave protagonist, redheaded Chucky is racked with worry and self-doubt.
Come on, on, Chucky. We're gonna find us some moose. I don't know, Tommy. I don't think this is such a good idea.
Dexter from Dexter's Laboratory may be a more self-assured redhead, but he still plays into the stereotype of the odd red-haired loner.
You are right. I am not a beefcake. I am just a cupcake.
I would say you're more like a strawberry shortcake.
It's important to emphasize that most redheads hold white privilege, and any othering they may face as a result of their hair color rarely equates with the serious discrimination experienced routinely by people of color today. In fact, many white people were infuriated by Disney announcing that they would cast Black actress Halle Bailey as Ariel in the live-action remake of The Little Mermaid.
The hashtag #NotMyAriel quickly trending on Twitter. Bailey's skin color front and center. Some tweeting, this isn't about racism, we just want an Ariel that looks like the Ariel we love.
But it's striking that the on-screen redhead's binary of emasculation versus exoticization corresponds to the way that our society others people of color or people of different cultures according to their gender. A clear example is how much of pop culture frequently hypersexualizes Asian American women while sidelining and emasculating Asian American men.
But I also want, nerdy Asian men to feel that they are worthy of love. And the problem is when you make fun of them in a secondary role where you don't explore their whole lives.
If we look back further in history, anti-ginger sentiments are actually rooted in racial prejudice. Europeans long associated Jewish people with red hair, often directing anti-Semitism and red-haired people, a link we can see reflected in Shakespeare's The Merchant of Venice, Dickens' Oliver Twist, and Christopher Marlowe's The Jew of Malta. Ireland has one of the highest numbers of red-haired people per capita in the world, and the BBC writes that negative reactions to red hair in Britain stem from anti-Irish prejudice of the 19th century. When Irish people were regarded as, quote, ethnically inferior, this prejudice arguably still exists to an extent in the UK today, and we can see its lingering presence in common phrases like the red-headed stepchild being used to describe someone who is isolated or unwanted.
I'm gonna beat you like a red-headed stepchild.
Red hair is also present in reductive depictions of Irish stereotypes everywhere, from characters like the Neanderthal O'Doyle family in 1995's Billy Madison.
Hey, who rules?
To the more hapless Frank and Doofus in 2021's Frank of Ireland.
It said on your form you've done a bit of sparring, Doofus.
Yeah, well, I used to work part-time in a spar, so it was only light sparring.
Irish film critic Kevin Marr branded 2020's Wild Mountain Time borderline offensive.
Now, they say this new bottle Guinness is as good as the pub, but that's a lie. But it isn't too bad, maybe.
Does a taste of glass.
It does.
While the film was intended as a positive portrayal of Irishness, Marr likened it to John Wayne's The Quiet Man, in which the Irish character is cast as a bewitching magical other there to sweep a charming American off his feet.
If anybody had told me 6 months ago that today I'd be in a graveyard in Innisfree with a girl like you that I'm just about to kiss, I'd have told them...
Oh, but the kissing's a long way off yet.
The way that red hair is used to diminish Irish characters illustrates how one visual difference can be weaponized against a whole group of people. A 2014 study by psychology undergraduate Kevin O'Regan found that more than 90% of male respondents with red hair reported having been victimized because of their hair color.
Like vampires, the ginger gene is a curse.
Ultimately, allowing the media to mock or stereotype any visual difference sends the message that this type of behavior is acceptable and affects how we view people with differences in real life.
Your son will be ginger his whole life. You might want to just put him down.
And when everyone's super, no one will be.
All the stereotypes about both redheaded men and redheaded women are expressed most obviously in a prominent on-screen character, the redheaded villain.
I probably should have mentioned this earlier. I'm poison.
Female redhead villains are often seductresses, their villainy linked to hyper-attractiveness and sexuality. One of Poison Ivy's greatest weapons is her ability to make love potions to trap her foes.
Why not send Junior home early?
And while in the Marvel Cinematic Universe we know Black Widow as an Avenger, in the comics she starts out as an antagonist of Tony Stark, seducing him to steal weapons for the USSR. Often their sexual agency is what female red-headed villains are punished for, as we see with the Bond villain Fiona Volpe in Thunderball.
You like wild things, Mr. Bond, James Bond?
Wild.
You should be locked up in a cage.
These stories not only play into the exoticizing of the female other, but also noticeably vilify any woman who's too assertively sexy or in control of her sexuality. An interesting pre-code forerunner to this trope is the 1932 film The Redheaded Woman, in which Jean Harlow, typically known for her platinum blonde hair, plays a redheaded seductress who sleeps her way up into high society.
Well, I'll tell you the trouble, Red. You're too pretty, and I don't trust myself.
While the narrative does frame her as a heartless vixen,
He doesn't love you, he loves me because he told me so.
it doesn't punish her promiscuity, thanks to the movie being made before the Hays Code, which would demand that immoral characters get their comeuppance. Lillian ultimately thrives as a symbol of how her ruthless world runs on the opportunism she's shrewdly mastered. An even more enjoyably bad example of the redheaded vixen is Divine in Pink Flamingos.
We're not going to run you out of town. We're going to kill you!
Who celebrates her title as the filthiest woman alive in a film beloved by the LGBTQIA+ community as, quote, timeless trash.
Filth are my politics, filth is my life!
Arguably, some more modern portrayals of female redheaded villains have taken a step back from that spirit of celebration. Redheaded Cheryl Blossom, who began as a one-dimensional sex symbol in Archie Comics, was updated into a villainous mean girl on Riverdale.
Consider this your last practice as River Vixens and your last week as my social handmaidens. You're fired on all fronts.
Even as the show attempts to round out her character in later seasons, red hair continues to be an important signifier of Cheryl's family and their cruelty.
You've been in cahoots with Daddy's twin. You tried to kill Nana Rose, and then you shipped me off to a ghoulish nunnery.
This cartoonish red-haired mean girl harks back to Big Red's character in Bring It On, whose hair color constitutes her nickname and almost her whole identity.
I'm still Big Red.
She's briefly presented as sexy in the opening dream sequence before being portrayed as the one-dimensional villain.
If I made any mistake as a squad leader, it wasn't borrowing cheers. It was announcing you as my successor.
In the American Horror Stories pilot, teenage Scarlet takes the red-headed villain trope to a new level by being both sexually sadistic and a violent murderer.
You just murdered 4 girls. We need to talk about your feelings about this.
Why? I've never felt better in my life.
Meanwhile, red-headed male villains are stranger, more horrific, and perpetuate the idea of red-haired boys as somehow abnormal.
From now on, no more Mr. Good Guy.
This has also tied into anti-Irish sentiment, stemming from a dark version of the mythological Irish leprechaun as a horrific monster who also embodies Irish stereotypes.
Drink what you want. Drink what you're able. If you're drinking with me, you'll be under the table.
In both The Incredibles and Megamind, the red-headed villain's origin story presents him as a loser who deals badly with rejection.
Good night, Hal.
It's a soft yes on Thursday. What's wrong with me?
When the nerdish outcast is not embraced by the one he desires, he lashes out and becomes fearsome.
I invented weapons, and now I have a weapon that only I can defeat.
There is no us, okay? There will never be an us.
But I have powers. You're supposed to be with me.
Fundamentally, the widespread use of red hair as an indication of villainy plays into our subconscious assumption that the other must be evil and dangerous, illuminating how we're conditioned to fear differences of any kind, even one so trivial as hair color.
The hair. Can you see a ginger tinge? Now that you mention it. So Christ only knows what's lurking downstairs. And that is a concern.
Vilifying redheads is likely not a very conscious decision by most of these characters' writers, who probably didn't have any ill intentions toward red hair or being different in the abstract. But this just speaks to how ingrained our subconscious feelings about the other can be. There are many complex fictional redheads who've been successful and beloved on screen.
Dawson. Rose Dawson.
Redheaded female characters have also taken on positive symbolic associations, embodying qualities like bravery, passion, and independence.
A day where anything can happen. A day I can change my fate.
In some ways, many of cinema's most iconic redhead characters, like the teen characters played by Molly Ringwald in 80s John Hughes movies or Julia Roberts' Vivian in Pretty Woman, still do star in narratives that center on differentness.
Sure don't fit in down on the boulevard looking like you do, not that you ever did.
But their stories are interested in their primary experience of feeling not like everyone else, and how this shapes them into strong individuals. Ringwald's redheads stand up for themselves against boringly conventional popular teens.
You know, I've been out with a lot of girls at this school. I don't see what makes you so different.
have some taste.
and celebrate their own strength and individuality.
What did that cost you?
Oh, about $15 for the shoes, secondhand, and I made the rest.
Robert's Vivian is well aware how she's outcast in her society as a sex worker, but she takes pride in her intelligence and retains a fierce sense of self-worth despite what others think.
I say who, I say when, I say who!
Thus, her red hair acts as a symbol of resilience as she advocates for herself throughout the film.
I was in here yesterday. You wouldn't wait on me? Oh, you work on commission, right? Yes. Big mistake. Big. Huge.
She's also introduced to us wearing a blonde wig. So as she lets out her natural, eye-catching red hair, this aligns with her journey of coming into a greater understanding of her own power and recognizing the size of her dreams.
I want the fairy tale.
Even in kids' cartoons, the association between redheaded girls and empowered independence comes through in characters like Jessie from Toy Story, Kim from Kim Possible, and Merida from Brave. All examples of strong-willed, courageous characters who embrace their unique talents and aren't held back by traditional gender roles.
I'll be shooting for my own hand!
More than ever today, red-haired characters have been breaking away from stereotypes, and red hair on screen doesn't have to be explicitly associated with one-dimensional differentness. Amy Adams, Julianne Moore, Jessica Chastain, Emma Stone, and Isla Fisher are some of Hollywood's most respected actresses who played a wide variety of roles and often managed not to be pigeonholed by traditional redhead casting.
We need to have enough vocabulary with them that we understand their answer.
Redheaded male stars, too, have moved beyond stereotypes like being undesirable. GQ's Conrad Quilty Harper described watching an arena of women swooning over Ed Sheeran as a life-changing epiphany in 2017, saying, "It wasn't until relatively recently that I could accept the fact that I could be desirable as a red-haired man."
Ed Sheeran is actually helping gingers get lucky. Ed Sheeran we love?
Yeah.
But I would think you got to give the credit to Prince Harry.
Right.
And in 2013, photographer Thomas Knights began Red Hot, an art project focused on showing redheaded men and redheaded women in a more attractive, desirable light. This slightly tongue-in-cheek ginger pride movement has been encouraged by a new generation of ginger-leading men like Tom Hiddleston and Homeland's Damian Lewis.
Be brave. I'm daring. I'm ready to fight for what you believe in.
Who have helped to undermine ginger stereotypes and show them for how silly they often are. Today, prejudice against redheads in most places is mild enough that it can be joked about.
Just feel like it's time that we stood up and said, you know, we're not going to take this anymore. We are ginger and we're going to fight.
In 2019, a UK-based sperm bank even put a call out for red-haired donors specifically because demand was so high. Meanwhile, some of the good associations with the redheaded character remain and are worth keeping alive, like the fiery redhead stereotype's implications of independence and vivaciousness.
Our fate lives within us. You only have to be brave enough to see it.
Since white redheaded characters aren't explicitly minorities and are more often used unconsciously to express difference, they can be an especially revealing symbol of our secret beliefs about the other. They end up exposing our societal impulse to interpret visual differences as negative or group people together.
We could be racist Tyranners, but redheads aren't a race, Jonah.
But sir, there's heaps of them.
The redhead problem is also a clue to how both our negative and positive biases are loaded with complicated cultural histories, connotations, and often, yes, prejudices, even when we think we're just expressing an individual preference. Becoming aware of the redhead dichotomy can help us wake up to how society treats all differences, from the surface level to the more significant. And it can push us to notice how we react to anyone who doesn't fit our unconscious assumptions about what is the norm.
Red hair and a hand-me-down robe. You must be a Weasley.
This is The Take on your favorite movies, shows, and culture.
Thank you so much for watching and for supporting us.
Please subscribe and never miss a take.